We with today is Beta Ray Bill, who was the very first person to finish Dark Dimension 7 and has gone through Dark Dimension 8. How are you doing today, Beta?
I'm doing very well. How about you?
I'm doing amazing. So I was reluctant to post a DD8 guide because I wasn't sure how difficult it was going to be and what was going to be the optimal team. So we're going to talk about regrets. And then towards the end of the video, we're going to talk about what do you think is going on with DD8 and DD7? It was very different. Like the barrier to entry on DD8 was much lower than DD7, right? Do you think that Odin was meant to be a legendary or a mythic? And we'll talk about that, right? It's because a lot of people have been asking that, right?
Yeah, no, I think that there was a huge pivot that Scopely had to do. I think that there was another character originally destined for DD8. And I think because, in my personal opinion, I think because of things being delayed, like we've heard Battle War has been delayed, I think that caused the repivot for whatever reasons. We could argue it's probably revenue driven, but I don't have any facts to that. But I think it's a pretty good guess that it's around that. And so I think they needed to get something out, and I think this was their solution to it. It absolutely, to answer your question, it absolutely didn't or doesn't feel like a real Dark Dimension to me.
Right.
I think it's great that so many people have access to get in it so quickly. So I think that's one aspect that changed significantly, because Purple ISO came out about 5-6 weeks ago. So people have had a lot of time to do it. I know I was telling people I thought there was probably going to be at least 1,000 that get in it on day one. I don't know what the actual numbers are. Last I looked, I know that we were at about almost 80 people that had completed it already. And so there's some number that are in it already. So I think for the community's sake, I think honestly it's a really good counterbalance to the frustration that the community has about the character unlocks right now.
Right.
And so making content available for more to get into is not a bad thing.
Well, but that also being said, I don't think he's stronger than Mephisto at all.
No, he's not. He's
not.
Absolutely not. He's absolutely not. Don't go into this expecting that this is like APOC felt or Dorm felt or Mephisto felt when you first got him.
He feels legendary. I mean, on the test server, I played him quite a bit, and I was like, he's good, easily a top 10 character, but not stronger than Mephisto. And I felt that there were reasonable ways to counter Odin in the same way that there are ways to counter Old Man Logan, but Mephisto is just a wall. So the very first 2 nodes are unrestricted, so a lot of people were able to get through that quite fine with Spider Society and or the mythics like Mephisto and Super Skrull. They're super easy. The non-legendary city hero. Now, did you go in with Ghost Rider Robbie? Because that's going to be the title of the video, is do not up. Because almost everybody that I talked to was not able to get through. Well, it's not that we weren't able to get to. Robbie didn't do anything. And they were just dependent on the 4-piece Spider Society. And I pivoted away from Ghost Spider to do, oh my God, I can't talk. Now I moved away from Ghost Rider Robbie to do Spider Gwen. What's your thinking there in non-legendary city?
Yeah, so I mean, when I was doing my planning towards this, I know that in the past we've sort of looked at some hybrid situations, like bringing Robbie in, because he was always a great character in DD6 and 7. I also know that people are seeing the long-term-ish, for whatever good that word is in terms of Scopely, value of the full Spider Society team right now. And so I opted to just go straight Spider Society. We were doing our runs in a Alliance voice chat last night, and I know some folks that were doing Robbie and were frustrated with it and ended up backing up, restarting, and finally just saying, screw it, I'm just going to bring full Spider Society. Now, having said that, can you do it? Sure. It's just going to take more hits, right? And so that's the cost balance trade-off that you have to sort of go through.
Okay.
One thing I did want to mention that we didn't say yet, before you do anything, because I know you're talking to a lot of players that maybe haven't even put purple on any characters yet, I highly encourage people to get a hold of Baka's spreadsheet, which is from the data mine, which shows you the characters in each node and each wave that you're going to face, but also it shows you their ISO and what their modifiers are. So things like one particular character might be focusing on their AoE hits in the center. And so study this more so than you probably have in the past, because I think it's important to think through what ISO you're going to put on your characters here and your positioning. So there's times where you may need to really rethink that. There was a couple times where I was wishing I had put healer on a team that I had because I just didn't have enough healing going on. So just a little more planning. If you're not doing the race, it's great because you have all the time in the world to sort of sit there and go through and analyze this and do some better planning. But in terms, back to your original question, I did straight Spider Society. It worked fine. My experience is going to be a lot different than everybody else right now because we were doing the race, right? And so I don't have a lot of time to sit there and focus on backing out, retrying, maybe I need to do this or whatever. So sometimes I would just keep it and heal and go back in just because I'm on that time crunch. But I think Spider Society, the full Spider Society, is absolutely the correct answer for the City Hero notes.
Yeah, my understanding is the passive on Peter B just keeps the team alive, and Ghost Rider Robbie just dies, and so Spider-Gwen at least is going to have the sustain. Let's talk about non-legendary city villain. On my screen here, I've got Vulture, Lizard, Kraven, Slayer, and Mysterio. Who did you use? What do you think about that?
I used that exact team. I think the challenge that we've got, this is one of the more difficult set of nodes. So there's 2 nodes for each one of these. And the challenge you have, of course, here is you don't have Doc Ock to help with healing and what else you need there with the buffs. So the challenge is, yes, I believe this is the right team for what we currently have available in our arsenal of city villains. But don't expect that you're going to go easily one-shot both nodes. You're going to end up getting a little frustrated as you get through it. They're not going to take, I remember back to DD4 or DD5 where some people were taking 30, 40, 50 hits to get through a node.
Yeah.
It's not anything like that. I think the 2 unrestricted nodes, you're going up against level 85, gear 16, 5 red, 5 yellow characters.
Okay.
So those are definitely easier. I think by the time you get to City Villain, I don't remember, I think they're either level 95, gear 18, or they may even be level 100 characters by this point. So they are definitely formidable. One thing you will note throughout all of the nodes is that they are giving us our first exposures to things like Omega Sentinel, since we've really not had an opportunity to play with her yet.
Right.
And she's doing some things where she's putting up barrier healing Sentinel all the time. And so it's making their large health pools feel even larger because you're just hitting them, and it's just taking forever to get through them. So you're going to find you're going to find lots of Sentinels Orcus tunes throughout the nodes here, and you're going to find, and this is more a general comment, not on the city villain specifically, but you're going to find they did a lot of taunters, a lot of healers, a lot of fortifiers throughout that just make these harder to get through. But so for city villain, that I think is the right team. I don't think we really have any other good options right now.
Okay, and we're going to go to the next part, and it was interestingly enough, like when I put this together here as what I was going to do, and you said pretty much you did the same thing, which is interesting. I'm glad that I guessed correctly what might work. Non-legendary global hero, I've got the 3 new Illuminati, Black Knight, and Nightcrawler. A lot of people are not going to have Captain Britain. What do you think? What did you do in non-legendary global hero?
So I actually, for all nodes, because of this amount of time we had to prep for this, I actually had 2 or 3 full metas for each mode so that I had a fallback, whether I needed to test it or if I needed a cleanup team or whatever. We know that in DD7, the extreme team was really the best team for this mode. So I had it ready to go, but we were a little unsure. I found extreme to be basically just a good sack team, or if you needed a final cleanup maybe, but they really weren't doing well in this mode. So the team you have there, I did not do Nightcrawler mixed with them when I did my run. I did Weaver, but I think Nightcrawler will be fine. It's really the Illuminati team that's doing a lot of the heavy lifting here, and having Black Knight, pinging and taunting to keep them from being hit, I think is the smart thing.
If I was,
so I think you're right on with that team.
Okay, so you would keep Nightcrawler or drop Nightcrawler? Is what I'm asking.
I'm actually going to do my timed run after reset when I can go back in tonight, and I'm going to probably try this exact theme.
All right, and then if someone does not have Captain Britain, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, that's going to be tough. I think Captain Britain is linchpin to that. I don't think that means that you can't get through it, but similar to what we were talking about earlier, I think you're just going to have more hits that you're going to just have to be prepared for.
Yeah, so it's just going to take someone longer to get through it. Not going to be impossible, but as far as being super efficient, this team, you think it'd be just fine?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, then let's go down to non-legendary global villain. I had earmarked the 4 new Orcus and Apocalypse. I already have Apocalypse done. What did you do, and how did that play out for you?
So I did that exact team. Well, no, because you've got the new character that's not released yet. So I did.
Yeah, I don't have her yet, but she'll be here someday, right?
Yeah. So what did I do? I did the 3 Orcus, APOC, and hold on a second. Who was my 5th?
Yeah, I'm planning on doing a Mega Sentinel just because of the stat boost, and I'm thinking that the new characters coming out are going to be better. Just like you were talking about non-legendary city villain, it's almost like they haven't sold us the best team to get through that yet, but you just kind of have to make do with what you have. What did you end up doing in Legendary Global?
Yeah, that's a good question. Now I'm trying to remember. Sorry, it was running through. It was such a blur yesterday. I did... Non-legendary villain. I did the 3 Orcus, APOC, and I think I did Emma. I have to go back and look through my notes. I think it was Emma.
Emma? Okay.
Just because we don't have that other character
more importantly,
yet.
that if you were going to go through it a month from now, would you do Omega Sentinel, do the 4-piece Orcus and APOC? Okay, that's fine. So, and what was your experience with going through non-legendary global villain?
Super easy.
Or Scientist Supreme, right? You probably did Scientist Supreme, right?
Oh yeah. That's it. Thank you.
Scientist Supreme. Here you go.
Yeah. So I did Scientist Supreme, and it was easy. I one-shot the first node, and I think, again, because I'm in a rush, there's things I probably could have done better on the second node, but I think I 2 or 3 shot it just to get through it in terms of the time crunch. Had I spent more time focused on it, I think both nodes are completely one-shottable. Going back to my earlier comment about Omega Sentinel, that when you're facing against it, I think she will be perfect with this squad of other 4 characters that you have here. And to what Kevin and Chad is saying, I also know Dorky was doing his run, and he did well with Cabal as well.
Okay.
So I think both are feasible. Orcus just felt really like stomping all over this to me. So I think that for those that have that team, I think that's a good choice.
Okay, and then lastly, the legendary... they kind of suggested that this would be very challenging to get through without Super Skrull and Mephisto. What was your take on the legendary or cosmic section?
So there is somebody, I think, in the leaderboard that got through that has not unlocked Mephisto yet.
Okay.
So clearly it's possible. It does feel like the difficulty from all of the nodes up until this point to these 3 gets really amped up.
Okay.
So the last 3 are definitely difficult. I mean, like on the second node, you're dealing with 3 or 4 Mephistos in the various waves. So you've got to plan for that. There's lots of Sentinels. There's lots of Omega Sentinels. There's the Gores are problems in here. There's nodes or waves where you're going to have 2 Gores drop.
Wow.
and an Old Man Logan. Really take your time and plan it through and test and back out if you need to. If you get into a situation, and I did this because, again, I was in the race, and wouldn't recommend doing it for people normally. I ended up going, okay, well, I'm just going to stop and keep this because I need to keep progressing. And then unfortunately had to come back into a wave that had 2 Gores and a Sentinel and an Old Man Logan. And so you end up getting taunted right away to Sentinels. You end up not being able to hit the Gores, and the Gores are wiping out 2 or 3 of your tunes all at once. And Old Man Logan in these will wipe out 3 or 4 tunes easily on your side. So you got to be really careful as you get through these nodes and just sort of plan it out. I did hear that Thanos was the better option, which is why I'm agreeing with what you have in there as your choices. I went with Gore instead, and so for my time run, I'm going to go back through with Thanos.
Okay, so this happens to mirror your suggestion: Thanos, Super Skrull, Mephisto, Gladiator, and Old Man Logan. I think I've gotten a lot of use out of the Super Skrull, Mephisto, and Old Man Logan today, having them already at purple ISO, and then it's just those are all high values. So let's just talk about the difference between DD7 and DD8, and do you think that Odin is a mythic character? I mean, what's your whole thinking about that?
Definitely the gameplay of both modes felt vastly different to me. The fact that so many could get in and so many could get through it so fast just did not feel like a typical Dark Dimension that we've had in the past. And as we were saying earlier, I don't think Odin feels like a mythic character. I think he feels like a legendary. And so I think he's got use, and he'll have use in multiple game modes. I'm looking forward to the creativity that people come up with in terms of what teams to pair him with. Hopefully, unfortunately, nobody's going to, or hopefully people don't put him with Asgardians, because I know that would be our sort of natural inclination to do that, but I just don't think that's a good spot for him. But the fact that he is a bit of a plug and play character and will work amongst a whole host of teams, I think is good. It just didn't feel like a Dark Dimension to me. It felt more like a Scourge without you having the ability to put Scourges on.
Yeah, I feel like they were unhappy with the amount of monetization that they got from the Old Man Logan trials, and their pivot away from that to this was they can sell legendaries for higher. You know what I mean? They sold this Odin for more than people probably spent on Old Man Logan. That's the only thing I could think of, because this feels like a legendary character. The price points, and I know that a lot of people that got into Dark Dimension 8 had spent thousands, where the first people that went into Dark Dimension 7 had spent tens of thousands, right? It's just a different feeling altogether, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting topic, because I get into this argument sometimes with people too. It all depends. I mean, those of us that have played in top alliances for a very long time tend to have lots and lots of resources available. So the cost estimates that a lot of people do are grossly exaggerated. Having said that, there is a factor difference similar to what you're talking about, but 7 was not tens of thousands, and 8 was not hundreds. I think that there is definitely a huge factor difference, but like, I can only speak from my experience, and having sat in Rank Arena 1 since Dormammu came out, that's 365 days times 500 cores. I think I've only been knocked back maybe 6 or 7 times in that whole time. That you amount a lot of resources, and then you get, from playing in top raid alliances, you get a lot of gear. So it's not like it used to be. There is actually a sort of a point in this game, in my opinion, that you get to where, the cost structure of it sort of peaks. And then after a while, you just start accumulating. Like right now, I was just talking with somebody earlier. I've got and I'm not saying this to brag, this is just to illustrate a point. I've got something like 60,000 Dark Diamond credits, and I'm looking at this going, I just have no use for it.
Wow.
And so when these new modes come out, they aren't as catastrophic or expensive as people tend to think they can be. So like for me personally, I had a ton of cores. And so when Purple ISO came out, I just cored the store and got my purple that way. So
it makes sense. So yeah, the costs are much lower than I was just saying, I guess, is your point. But there was this was much different than DD7 though. The number of people and I mean, everybody's got resources, but the general amount was quite a bit, substantially lower than what it took in DD6 or DD7 or the Dark Dimensions before, you know, the people that went in first, you know, a significant amount of resources that they had accumulated or more money spent, where that DD8 did not feel that way. All right. So what do you think this is going to look?
Plus, on top of that, they didn't release, you know, with 7, you had a new gear. They didn't release the materials for that until literally almost the day that Dark Dimension dropped.
Mm-hmm.
Here you had roughly 6 weeks of being able to farm for the you know, if you had the gold and if you had the cores, you could farm away in the store, and so that made it a hell of a lot easier for people to get ready for it.
Yep. So Dark Dimension 9, I'm just saying, probably going to be Cerebro, right? We'll see. Have to see. Or Professor X. We will see. Anything you want to say before we go?
No, just like I said in the beginning, make sure that people get a hold of the Baka sheet. Take your time, think through your ISOs, think through your positioning. I do want to do a shout out to Stocky for getting through first. I literally was on his tail, but unfortunately, when I started my run, I had about 7 or 8 anomaly resets just getting into Dark Dimension. So that kind of put me back about 10 minutes right out of the gate. So that sort of impacted it a bit. But congrats to him and to Cindy and to all the other folks that made it into the top 10. And just to send a shout out to Sassy, just a reminder, I did finish right before you and 2 before Dorky.
There you go. So a link to this spreadsheet will be in the description. I just want to point out there's a toggle here for DD7 and DD8, and it defaults to DD7. All right. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.